George Clooney and Steven Soderbergh are here. They first collaborated in 1998 with the film Out of Sight. Last year, they re-teamed for the blockbuster remake of Ocean's 11. In addition, they've also have their own successful production company, Section 8. Together, they have developed and produced several films, including Insomnia and Far From Heaven. Their latest is Solaris, written and directed by Steven. The film stars George as a psychologist sent to space, and in the process gets a second chance at love with his late wife. I am pleased to welcome both of them to this table. Welcome.
Thank you.
What brought you two together?
Oh, that's a good question.
Oh, really?
It was a personal ad.
Was it?
No,
George does read personal ads.
And he writes a good one.
And he writes a good one, too.
No, I like it.
The Out of Sight was an open directing assignment, I think they call it.
Yeah.
And there was a long list of people pursuing it or being pursued to do it. And at the time, I was near the bottom of that list. And but I felt I knew how to do it. And so I went and met with George and with Jersey Films, the producers, and sort of made my pitch about how I would do it if I was given the shot.
Yeah. And then you, what, George, you had chemistry? It was...
Well, we were both sort of coming off of not our best time films. The film I'd done before was Batman and Robin, and yours is The Underneath, right? Was that the last one?
Among many others.
Right.
Yeah. 5 in a row that nobody saw.
That nobody saw. So, so we had a great time working together, and we really liked it. And we had a good script and a great cast. And Steven made a really, a film that I couldn't be more proud of. And we got along well. We sort of had the same, reference of films that we liked, and we hit it off pretty well.
But you also produce films you don't star in, you have nothing to do with, like Insomnia,
right.
like Far From Heaven.
Right.
Full Frontal, was that a Section 8?
No, that was a pure Miramax production, top to bottom.
So, with respect to Solaris, you wrote a letter to him? No, that's another subject. Let me come back. I made a mistake. I'm thinking about Confessions already.
No, that's right.
Yeah, Confessions. But with respect to Solaris, did you wrote this with the intention of George starring in it, or?
No, I had somebody in my head, and that's a normal thing for me to do when I'm writing, just to have a face. And at the time, I knew that the chances of that actor being available or interested was very slim. And so I got through the end of it, and at the time, because we sort of passed things back and forth just as a matter of course, since we're business partners, I'd given George the script to read to get his reaction, to get his comments, because he usually has pretty good notes, good producer notes. And then I didn't hear back from him for a while.
And why not?
Well, I wrote him a letter. When you read the script and you read what Steven was doing with the screenplay, he was about to take a really big swing. He was gonna swing really hard for the fences, and it was exciting to read, and it was exciting to be, to see somebody doing that, and I wanted to be on board, but there's also other elements, and when you're partners, part of the deal is we have to sort of give ourselves a bit of a buffer zone where we have the ability not to, I don't have to try and force feed myself down Steven's throat on a project, and sort of vice versa. And I read it, and the actor that he first talked to wasn't available, wasn't able to do it. And I sent him a letter and just said, look, I don't know if you're thinking of me or if you would think of me, and I don't know if I can do it. And I don't know if I have the chops to do it, but if you do think of me, I'd love to give it I'd give it a try. I'd go out there and give you the best I could. You need that sort of, the reason I wrote it in the letter was because...
that's what I want to get at, because it says something about the relationship.
It's important. First of all, I like writing letters. I think they're great. They're good to have in your hand. But there's also something else, which is, if I'd said to him right here, hey, how about me? There's that, and you need them to do that privately.
Yeah.
People need space. They need a buffer zone in a way so that they can just sit back and think it through. And I wanted it not to be a, yeah, good, kind of thing out of politeness and somehow form some sort of an awkward thing. We work really well together, so part of that is by giving space, you know.
And you got the letter?
I was a little afraid because George does like to write letters, but normally when something's gone horribly wrong. So when I got a call saying there's a letter coming from George that needs to be put in your hand, I immediately started sifting through the last 4 years, basically, to figure out if I'd made some horrible mistake. But I think George is right. It was actually the perfect way to broach the subject because I felt he could do it and hoped that he felt he was ready to do it.
Why have you said, and George just alluded to it, this is perhaps the most ambitious thing you have ever done?
Yeah.
You've done a lot of very ambitious films, it seems to me.
Well, I guess for me it was ambitious in a couple of ways. Conceptually, it was ambitious. It was about everything that I'm interested in, all rolled into one movie. And it was an attempt on our part to make a movie like 2001 that provoked that kind of discussion, that kind of controversy, and that risked having a lot of people look at it and go, you know, what does this mean? What is it? I mean, what happens in the film is very clear, right. I think. What it all means is open to several different interpretations more than any other film I've made. And to do that with the backing of a studio, making a sort of mainstream Hollywood film with a movie star is not normal these days. Was it the actor, or was the character that intrigued you, or the story, the ideas that are expressed in this movie?
Both, obviously. When you actors, it's very hard for an actor to read a screenplay and first not just read his role. It's almost impossible to divorce yourself. You know, if a sound guy goes to see a movie, he can hate it because, you know, the sound isn't right. It's just part of your, you know, being. But I also loved the idea that he was going to tell a story and he wasn't going to answer anything. He was going to literally and purposefully, without saying, without it being an accident, leave the questions all out for everyone to sit in the theater afterwards and go out to dinner afterwards and talk about. That's a really, that's out there, and that's scary. It's scary for a director because obviously it leaves you, Steven, open for shots because people will go, well, I don't understand it, so I dismiss it.
It's about what? You have said it's about, and I mentioned here in the script, you know, it is about the idea, it's a love story. It's about a romance. It's about the idea, if you could do it again, would you make the same mistakes? That's the initial pull into the film, what gets you into the heart of the movie. And then what it becomes about, I think, by the end, is surrendering to the unknown. And that can be, you know, a metaphor for whatever you want. It can be for what we're doing here. It can be for falling in love. It can be for any of those things. And that's really, the whole movie funnels to a point where George's character has to make a decision, a very crucial decision. And, you know, let's just say that he chooses, I think, at a key moment to surrender to the unknown and not make a decision that he would have made at the beginning of the film, where he's an extremely rational, sort of scientifically based thinker.
But it's also, which is interesting, it's also based in a love story, which is another tricky piece to this. Is it's a really beautiful sort of timeless love story about loss and grief and sort of that desperate need to get back what you lost or what you think you lost, because of course your memory makes it better than it was and romanticizes it. But mostly it's about, there is a timeless love story to this, at least in his mind, and that's important to him. And that's sort of what I kept trying to wrap my head around when we were doing it, was that as much of this deals with grief and loss, it also deals with this incredible love story. I mean, the line in the film that I think describes the film best is when Ulrich says, "There's no answers, just choices," because that seemed to be kind of clear with the film.
Tell me about your character, who he is, and his wife, who commits suicide, and he's in grief over that.
And it's all those, you know, I'm a shrink. I'm a character. My character's name is Chris Kelvin, and he's a shrink. It's in the future, not too far in the future, so that it's all, you know, hardware and things, but it's in the future, and we pick it up with me dealing with a few years earlier the suicide of my wife, and all of the bad things that could happen. We had a fight just before you come home, you find her. All of those elements that that make it even more difficult and provide guilt and all that. And then
it's said that she committed suicide because of
an
abortion.
Yeah, exactly.
But you didn't know about it.
Which I didn't. I didn't know she was pregnant.
Right.
You know, and it's about sort of coming to terms with that kind of grief. And he was a character that from the very beginning, when I read it, I thought, man, I've never been given an opportunity to play that kind of a role, because there aren't places for actors to hide in. You know, we all have really good spots. You know, there'll be a joke, or there's some action, or there's something, there's charm, there's whatever you get to use to sort of protect yourself, insulate yourself in a scene. And there weren't any of those in this. This was just, you know, you'd have to just sit in the room and Steven would go, okay, you know, last 30 seconds of your life. And you'd have to just go, and you couldn't protect. So that was scary to me, but it was also, if you're going to do it, you know, do it with Steven.
Do it. All right, roll tape. Here's our first clip. Take a look.
Yeah.
Who plays your wife?
Natasha McElhone. She's fantastic. She's a good actress.
Yeah.
Really smart actress.
You chose her because
that's a
pretty good way to start.
Yeah, she was somebody I had in mind as well. When I was writing, I'd seen her debut film, which was Surviving Picasso, a James Ivory film, and just made a mental note. Great, smart, sexy, grown-up. And, you know, when I finished the script, literally called her representatives and said, bring her over, I want to put her in a room with George.
Yeah.
And it worked. You do everything. You wrote the script, you direct it, you shoot it, you edit it. You do all those things. You don't get credit for the back half.
On this one, yeah.
On this one.
Part of that was, this is going to be the last film I make for a while.
You can go away for a while?
I'm very ill. No, I need a break.
Sick of films, is that what it is?
Yeah, really.
You need a break because you've been working too hard.
Yeah, we've made...
Ocean's 11, Full Frontal.
We've made 7 back-to-back, starting with Out of Sight, so I'm beat, need a break.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Traffic. I mean, you were nominated for 2 Academy Awards last time out, as I remember.
Yeah. That was, seems like 10 years ago.
Yeah. Does that create a level of expectation for you that just makes it even more difficult?
I don't think so. I mean, I really try to block all that out and just go to work. And if people have liked what you've done in the past and sort of raise the bar a little bit every time you make a movie, then, you know, there are worse problems to have. So I don't...
Yeah. Before we leave that subject, this is about the partnership. You guys are trying to find some balance, I assume. I mean, Ocean's 11 is... You can knock that out of the park.
Well, it's designed to do what it did. Yeah.
Are you trying to balance this so that you can do those kinds of films, which you enjoy doing, which do well, which reach a certain audience, and at the same time do things that are more creative, more experimental, more for both of you?
Well, they'll let you do them then if you do an Ocean's 11. And the truth is, I'm really proud of Ocean's 11. I don't feel like that's a bad
I'm not
film.
putting it down either. That's my point, was it reached a different audience.
So the idea is, if you're going to do those kind of genre films like that, at least those are the kind, if they're successful, that you can still be proud of and go, I really like entertainment. You know, I like The Sting. You know, I like films that are, you know, that fit into that. And in the same world, we want to try to be able to, we're trying to you know, it's not just for it's for ourselves, I suppose, just trying to raise the bar and just keep doing things. We want to push it. Yeah. It's fun. And, you know, we want to try and get, and what's amazing, this is a very brave film for Fox to do. It's very brave. This is not a studio film.
It's brave because it's not an automatic audience getter.
No, it's not. And it's, and it'll alienate some audience members. That's okay, because this is the kind of film that 10 years from now, all the people who were involved will also still be bragging about their involvement.
Alienate them because of what?
Well, because if you go to movies and you want everything told to you, you want to go to a movie and just have a bunch of stuff told to you,
exactly.
then you're going to find the sort of rhythms and the aesthetic of this movie very unusual, because it's just showing you things, and it's not editorializing about them, it's not trying to spin them, it's not trying to sort of, you know, reach down your throat and pull the emotions out of you, even though it is a very emotional movie. And so I think for a lot of people who are used to sort of having everything done for them, it's just going to be different.
Okay, let me make this point too, and you help me understand the difference in terms of previous films. The previous film did not have flashbacks to when they were alive.
No, there were a few scenes interspersed that took place on Earth, but the relationship as it existed on Earth before was not explored.
And why do you do it here?
Well, because, as we were saying, when you talk about the issue of a second chance, are you sort of predetermined to follow the same trajectory again, given similar circumstances? It seemed to me you needed to show the relationship on Earth so that you felt this undertow that was beginning to tug at them.
So the hardest thing for you to get done here in making Solaris is what?
For me?
Yeah.
I think finding a way to have the film be emotionally clear and direct. That's what I think is going to be interesting about how people respond to the film, because I think actually there will be a tendency on the part of some to overthink it when in point of fact the film in emotional terms is extremely simple and extremely straightforward. And so for me to find this sort of if you imagine like a musical staff, you know, to find a way to interweave all the questions and the plot and the emotions so that people came away saying, well, I felt something. You know, I was very, very connected to the characters, and yet these things that are open-ended seem to support that and not irritate me.
Like the unknowing of the future, like life after death.
Sure, that's a big question in this one.
What's the central dilemma for this character?
Well, the central dilemma is that he's completely lost. He's lost his will to live. Ultimately, he's lost anything that interests him, because some of it is guilt, but a good deal of it is just plain loss and grief, and that it's not something that's fixable in a couple of scenes. You know, it's not. It's people who've been married and lost someone and have to go to parties and try to reconstruct their life, and it doesn't work yet. It doesn't fit into those things, and you can't just sort of jam it in and make it work. It doesn't fit, and so you're always just off. Everything's just out. You know, the early phone conversations I'm having, you just get this sense that you're doing everything right, playing by all of the rules, but it doesn't fit, it doesn't work.
What does your life experience tell you about the answer to the question, if we had it to do over, we'd make the same mistakes?
Well, it seems to be, it's a good question. You know, I'm trying to be careful to answer it, because I don't want to sort of lead other people in certain directions. But, I mean, I have my own sort of beliefs about all of it, about God even, about all the questions that sort of take place. I also think, you know, there is the possibility that we'll do with all the same information, with all of the information in front of us, we might just do the same thing again.
Make the same choices.
Might very well. I mean, you look at your life. I look at my life and I go, okay, if I had my life to relive right now, there's 5 or 6 spots I'd like to really do differently, that I really blew it, that I did something lame and I really want it back. But I'm at the best place I've ever been in my life, creatively, personally. My life, you know, it couldn't be better. So all of those things led to this, including those mistakes.
Exactly right.
So I'm not sure that redoing them works. and would help. I don't know. I might end up somewhere completely different.
Do you agree with that, Steven? I certainly do.
Absolutely. You know.
I mean, here you are, as hot as a director can be.
I feel
in your professional life.
Actually.
Oh, come on.
We got the uniform.
I know.
Black sweater, white shirt.
Black sweater, white.
Yeah.
I didn't get that.
No, but I mean, it is true for you too, isn't it?
Look, I own the mistakes. I own the, you know, the good times. It's all part of, you know, if everything goes like this all the time, it's
But you're
boring.
taking time off because you're just tired?
I'm tired.
Just that, fatigue. Yeah. It's not because you want to re-examine something, not because you want to rethink something. It's not, or maybe it is.
Why? What have you heard?
I know.
I turned 40 in January. So.
You did?
Yeah.
Well,
But
you can help him with that. I mean, you've turned 40.
I'll let me know what it's like. I can't wait to turn 40 myself.
You're how old?
41.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So was it a big deal for you?
No, it's
We had
okay.
a nice party.
You had a nice party?
No, look, I'm in the luckiest group for the profession that I've chosen. You know, I'm at 40. There's more work than ever for me. So work-wise, health-wise, I've never felt better. So everything was going pretty well.
So
now, having said that, I'll break my leg stepping out.
Well, or you'll think about all the roles and what difference. I mean, it would have taken you on a different route. It may have been that the route you might have taken, if you'd taken different roles or won other roles, might have made a different kind of career. But you can't imagine it would be any better, no matter what it might have been.
Well,
Yes?
you always imagine things could be better because it never feels right. You never feel complete. And you never think you did it completely right. But on the other hand, I'm in the position now where we get to make movies we want to make, and we get to do them. We get to use sort of whatever power we have to try to do the right kind of films right now. And I couldn't think of a better place to be.
Talk about Confessions, which you and I are going to talk about at another time when it's made, but it's coming out of Segment 8, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Section 8.
Section 8, I mean.
Segment 8, I like better.
What corporate name will be changed tomorrow.
Exactly.
You wanted to direct.
I didn't want to direct. I had a great screenplay that I wanted to get made and was falling apart and had a lot of money against it because it was in pre-production several times and fell apart. So there was a bunch of money against it, and it's not the kind of film that can cost $40 million to make because it's not that kind of a story. So I thought I might be able to get it made if I sort of picked it up and carried it over the finish line, and that meant by going in and saying, all right, I'm doing this for nothing. Everybody else who comes in has to do the same. We've done that. We did it with Solaris too. You know, the idea is if you're willing to take the money quotient out, and you're in a position where they'll pay you a lot of money, then you're knocking off a considerable amount of the budget right off the bat, so that they'll make Solaris, and we get to push those kind of films.
Now, Confessions is the story of
Chuck Barris.
Chuck Barris, the Gong Show host. I mean, Gong Show, creative game shows is what he did. And he had supposedly had this life as a CIA assassin.
Right.
That's what he wrote about, at least.
Yes, that's what he wrote about.
I don't know whether he was put on from him or not. Is that part of the movie, or?
We'll leave it up to interpretation on that one, because again, it's another of those films that that you get to look at and make your own decision.
Here's what's interesting: you are directing that during the day or at night, or editing it. You're editing that while you're acting for Steven.
Yes.
During the day.
But that worked. I was exhausted. I mean, I was really exhausted. But that works to your advantage because it's harder to put up any kind of fights.
Okay, but did you have to convince? Who did you have to convince that you could direct this thing? Anybody?
Myself, first of all.
And you had questions about that?
Oh, sure. I still do.
What kind of questions?
Well, whether or not you know where to put the camera, because I had a good screenplay, I could get good actors. So then it comes down to, am I able to get this on camera? And it wasn't a film that you could just shoot. You sort of had to manhandle, and because it's a really tricky narrative. This one's it's not a little easy film to do. So it's tricky. And Steven came on as an executive producer, and was. He got the final cut of the film as a protection for me, and
as a protection from you?
No, for me.
For you.
Because usually a first-time director won't get a final cut. The studio does. But what we've done as producers a lot is we'll be able to get a final cut and give it to the filmmaker, protect them, so that they get to make the film they set out to make. And sometimes that works really well, and sometimes it works not as well.
So when Harvey, whoever suggested this idea, Harvey Weinstein of Miramax, you were okay with it?
I suggested it.
It was your idea.
I said, well, let's I'll get a cut, you get a cut, and then we'll let, of the three of us, the best filmmaker get the final cut.
And you're okay with this role?
It seemed like a good solution, you know, because it's I want to protect the filmmaker, and it's sometimes that involves protecting filmmakers from themselves. I mean, I've had producers
who
do that.
protects you from yourself?
My producers.
Does it really?
Absolutely.
How about your partner? I mean, he might look at a film you cut and say...
Sure. No, I remember screening Out of Sight for George, and he had some notes that I thought were excellent, and they were that stuck in my mind because they were producer notes, they weren't actor notes.
Yeah, you can't do this here, but I want you to try at least. What's interesting about George for me is that he's both on the one hand enormously funny and has this light sense, but there's also a guy who takes his work very seriously.
Well, I think that's what we sensed immediately, was that we were extremely work driven, and also felt really fortunate to be doing this. I mean, it's
and we also have sort of the same, you know, a set that we're on usually, with the exception of Solaris, because this was such a different energy. It really was different to watch people come on the set. They'd go, "Hey guys," and it'd just be dead. And they're like, "All right, I'll see you guys later."
Yeah, not the time.
But we're in that life is too short world as well. We don't want to be working with difficult people.
Absolutely.
Because what we do is a privilege, and we want everyone who's there to feel like it's the same.
Yeah, it is so much fun to do what you really most want to do. To do it with people that make it difficult, painful, it ruins the experience which you've been given to have fun, do well, and work hard, and share.
As you get
passion.
older,
you learn that later.
more and more.
Yeah, you do, because time is.
Yeah, I mean, you really do feel like,
I
don't want to. Who needs that? Like, it's the clock's running on all of us, you know, and who wants someone around who just is a bad vibe?
Okay, when it comes to Solaris, you're the director and you're editing it, you know. So what role do you play now in a film in which you are
Nothing.
the star?
This is all I do is walk in, do exactly what he asks me to do, try to do exactly what he asks me to do. No, that's really true. You have to remember, I was also, you know, the reason you go to do a film with Steven and that he does all of the things in the film is because he's in control of that. And so my role in that is to be part of this machinery. It's a good thing to do. I've survived and done the best over all the years being part of a bunch of people working at the same time. And he's at the helm. That's good. It worked. Out of Sight was an ensemble piece in every way. You know, Oh Brother was, Three Kings were. The films that I've done that I've been most successful at, ER was an ensemble. It works best if you're part of this machinery and you just try and keep that going. And someone has to be at the helm. He is, and that's a good thing.
I want to see one more clip from Solaris before we leave, which is one where he tells her why he needs to believe that she is real.
Right.
If there's anything you could do now that this film is made, would you change anything?
Wow. Well, yeah, you'd always change stuff. But at the end of the day, this was just one of those, I don't know if it was just so many films back to back or the subject matter or the jobs. It was hard. It was just hard.
I read one thing you said, which was interesting, is that you talked about the films about all these things, about connections and about life and love and happiness, all these kinds of things. And then you said after you made the movie, you found out it was about something else. Do you remember that?
Oh, absolutely.
What was that?
This one?
Yeah.
I don't know
Solaris.
yet. I don't know yet.
You know.
Because we just finished it, literally. And it was such, I purposefully kind of block out those issues, those questions, and go completely on instinct. I mean, this all happened very casually. The whole thing started because of a conversation that I had with someone at Fox who said, "Hey, have you ever been interested in science fiction?" I said, "Well, if it was something like Solaris." And that's how this started.
If it was something like Solaris,
Right.
because you'd seen the movie?
Yep, and read the book.
And read the book, both, before you even got involved in the project.
Yeah. So that's pure chance that somebody said that.
But you're using science fiction here simply to tell a story.
Yeah, I mean, what's great about science fiction is it can be this sort of launching pad for larger ideas, and this was certainly that.
All right, roll tape. Here's that clip.
So even if you remember something wrong, I am predetermined to carry it out. I'm suicidal because that's how you remember me.
I don't believe that we're predetermined to relive our past. I think that we can choose to do it differently. The day I left and you said that you wouldn't make it, I didn't hear you because I was angry. This is my chance.
We were talking about this film, which is about ideas and asking questions, and you said something interesting, that in between 65 to 75,
Pretty much.
you know,
Yeah.
you had Stanley Kubrick and a lot of people who did 2001, which you've said is one of the most influential films on
Of
you.
all time.
On all time,
Yeah.
Mike Nichols, you've got
Mike.
Sidney Lumet, you've got, you know,
And this,
all the guys.
and what seemed to be at play there was, you said, guys that are asking, and women who are in the film business asking questions.
People asking questions and not supplying all the answers. And you watch films like, you know, Ashby films, you know, watch, you know, Harold and Maude. I mean, just, it's amazing to think that studios actually made those films. That's what I think is so brave about what Fox is doing. It's hard because this doesn't fit into a category that you can go, okay, now here it is, sell this. That's why we come and are able to sit down and talk with you and say the difference is that this is a grown-up film. It's a film for grown-ups. And we want to do those kind of films. They're fun to do.
And at the same time, have the full spectrum of other kinds of movies you want to make as well.
Sure.
That entertain and bring you in and take you to another place.
Yeah,
period.
we hope. That's why I go to the movies.
To be taken to another place.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Great to see you.
Thank you so much.
George,
Thanks.
great to see you again.
You too.